at 9:42 on the morning of Monday, the 4th of May, 1818, Priscilla Copley Tallis, Duchess of Kellington, slipped off her wedding ring before anyone at the breakfast table understood that she meant to leave. The plain gold band caught briefly against the knuckle of her left hand, its fine inner scratch, made when Oliver had steadied her on the chapel step 11 months earlier, flashed in the light from the long windows of Kellington House. Lady Euphemia Grenville stopped stirring her chocolate. Bartholomew Crane lowered the folded memorandum he had been reading. At the head of the table, Oliver looked at Priscilla with the stillness he reserved for unexpected political news. Only the footman beside the sideboard continued to move, though even he placed the coffee pot down without sound. The message from Mrs. Toller lay open beside Priscilla's plate. It had been delivered by a breathless servant girl less than 2 minutes before. Molly Toller, 16 years old, was to leave Paddington Basin at 11 o'clock with 3 other pupils of the Kellington Female Instruction Fund. Mrs. Toller had withdrawn consent the previous afternoon. No one had answered her. The departure must be stopped, Priscilla said. Lady Euphemia's brows lifted. At 58, Oliver's paternal aunt had perfected an expression that made any objection appear childish before she spoke. The placements were approved weeks ago. Mrs. Toller has changed her mind because separation has become real. Poor women often mistake fear for judgment. She put her refusal in writing. Yesterday, Euphemia replied, after arrangements were made, passages purchased, and employers notified. Priscilla turned to Crane. The secretary-treasurer sat 3 places down, narrow-shouldered and immaculate in dark brown. Do the indentures bear my signature? Crane's eyes moved toward Euphemia before returning to Priscilla. They do, Your Grace. Bring them to me. The travelling copies are with the girls. The parish counterparts remain in the proper offices. Then bring the fund register and every related letter. Crane's fingers tightened around the memorandum. After breakfast, certainly. Oliver set down his cup. He had returned from a political meeting after midnight and still wore the faint fatigue of a man who had spent too many hours managing other people's disorder. Priscilla, the matter should be examined properly. Henshaw can be summoned. The parish overseer can be informed. We will have the documents compared before any accusation is made. The barge leaves in 1 hour and 18 minutes, which is why we should proceed in order. She looked at him. Oliver was not indifferent. That had always made the wound harder to name. He cared deeply, but he believed care became useful only after he had arranged it. Order will not help Molly once she is beyond London. No one is suggesting we ignore the message. You are suggesting we finish breakfast. The quiet words struck more sharply than anger. Oliver's jaw shifted. I am suggesting that you do not rush to Paddington on the strength of one frightened note. It is not one frightened note. It is a mother's refusal. Euphemia placed her spoon on its saucer, and 4 respectable placements secured through months of effort. You cannot overturn them because Mrs. Toller has become emotional. Consent does not become emotional merely because a woman without rank gives it. Crane cleared his throat. If Your Grace will permit me. The papers were signed in committee. The fund has legal obligations. Priscilla turned back to him. Did I sign apprenticeship indentures? You signed the approved forms. That was not my question. A silence followed. Crane's gaze dropped to the memorandum. Euphemia answered for him. You signed the necessary papers. I was present. Priscilla remembered the committee room 6 weeks earlier. A stack of folded forms, stiff marbled covers, Crane with the ink, Euphemia explaining that the girls' travel allowances and placements had been settled. Priscilla had signed lower panels, offered one after another, while another meeting waited. She could not recall seeing a single full page. The realization did not arrive as certainty. It arrived as a space where certainty should have been. What were the names of the employers? She asked. Crane hesitated. The final arrangements were handled through the northern agents. Where? The route begins at Paddington. Where does it end? The receiving workshops are listed in the employer, copies, which you say are already with the girls. Yes, Your Grace. Priscilla rose. Her chair made a low sound against the carpet. Oliver rose with her. Where are you going? To Paddington Basin. Then I will come. You may come if you intend to stop the departure. His expression hardened, not with anger, but with the instinct to regain control of the scene. And if I intend to prevent my wife from placing herself in the middle of a public dispute before the facts are known, then you will arrive too late. She crossed to the small escritoire near the window. A sheet of cream paper lay beneath the pen tray. Priscilla lifted it, placed it flat on the writing surface, and smoothed both hands over it until no corner curled. No line would be hidden beneath a fold. No explanation would be supplied later for words concealed now. Behind her, Euphemia said, "This display will damage the fund more than any mother's panic." Priscilla dipped the pen. Then the fund is too fragile to survive the truth. She wrote, without haste, though every second mattered. 4 girls are to leave Paddington at 11 under papers bearing my signature. One mother withdrew consent yesterday. I signed no indenture knowingly. I am going to stop them. I will not wear your ring while your house uses my name to bind those who cannot refuse. She blotted the ink, left the paper fully open, and carried it to Oliver's place. The gold band rested warm in her palm. For one instant, she remembered his hand beneath her elbow on their wedding morning, the pressure firm and careful after her slipper caught on the chapel step. He had looked at her then as though steadiness were the most intimate promise he knew how to make. Priscilla placed the ring on the note. Oliver stared at it. Something in his face changed. But she could not afford to wait for him to understand the whole injury before she acted against the immediate one. Anne is readying your cloak. Lady Copley's maid was not present, but Priscilla's own maid, Anne Mercer, had entered quietly from the passage after hearing raised voices. The carriage is being brought round, Your Grace. Thank you. Oliver stepped away from the table. Priscilla. She stopped but did not turn fully. Do not mistake delay for indifference. Do not mistake intention for action. The words landed between them with no cruelty, only exhaustion. She met his eyes. If you come, come to help the girls, not to bring me home. Oliver's shoulders went still. Priscilla left the breakfast room with Anne. No one followed her into the hall. A servant opened the front door. Grosvenor Square lay bright, beneath a pale spring sky. Carriages moving along the curved roadway with the ordinary confidence of a city that did not know 4 girls might be carried beyond it before noon. Priscilla entered the ducal carriage. Paddington Basin, she told the coachman. As quickly as the streets allow. The carriage moved away from Kellington House. Inside the breakfast room, the mantel clock marked 9:51 when Oliver lifted the ring from the open page. The gold was still warm. He read Priscilla's note once. Then again, Crane began to rise. "Sit down," Oliver said. The secretary obeyed. "You will not leave this house. You will not touch a register, letter, account book, or committee paper. The steward will seal your office until Mr. Henshaw arrives." Crane's face lost colour. "Your Grace, I assure you that nothing irregular has occurred." "Then the seals will protect your innocence." Oliver turned to the footman. "Send a mounted messenger to the Marylebone Parish overseer. Tell him the 4 indentures are formally disputed and no departure is to proceed until the papers have been examined. Send another to Mr. Henshaw. He is to meet me at Paddington Basin with a clerk and receipt book." "Yes, Your Grace. Have my carriage brought round now?" Euphemia rose with slow dignity. "Oliver, you are allowing Priscilla's distress to dictate the household." He folded the note along no line at all, then stopped himself and left it open on the table. "No," he said. "My wife chose to act while the rest of us chose breakfast." He placed the ring in his closed hand and strode from the room as the clock advanced toward 10. At 10:38, Priscilla's carriage turned beneath the soot-darkened archway at Paddington Basin and stopped beside a line of carts waiting to unload coal, timber, and sacks of grain. The air smelled of wet rope, horse sweat, and canal water. Men called across the wharf. A crane groaned above a stack of barrels. Beyond the noise, a narrow passenger barge sat low against the quay, with its gangplank already in place. 4 girls in identical brown cloaks stood beside small trunks marked with the seal of the Kellington Female Instruction Fund. One of them was crying without sound. Another held herself rigidly, as though movement might be mistaken for consent. Mrs. Toller stood between the girls and a broad-shouldered man in a dark travelling coat. Her bonnet had slipped crooked, and a sheet of paper shook in her hand. "You can't take her," she said. "I gave my refusal yesterday. I sent it to the fund, and I brought another copy here." "The papers are executed," the man replied. "Your daughter is bound, Mrs. Toller. I have my instructions." "Then your instructions are wrong." Priscilla stepped down before the footman could fully lower the carriage step. Anne Mercer followed with Priscilla's cloak gathered over one arm. Several heads turned at once. The broad-shouldered man recognized her and removed his hat. "Your Grace, your name?" "Webb, Your Grace. Thomas Webb, Mr. Crane engaged me to escort the girls to Braunston. After Braunston, they are to continue by wagon. To whom?" Webb's expression tightened. "The employer copies name the receiving masters." "Have you read them?" "I was told there was no need." "Then you do not know where these children are going." "They aren't children," he said carefully. "They're apprentices." Mrs. Toller came toward Priscilla and held out the paper. "I wrote yesterday afternoon. Molly told me Saturday that they meant to send her north. Until then, I believed the place was in London." The document bore her signature and the date of the previous day. Its wording was plain. She withdrew all consent for her daughter's removal from London and requested that no journey proceed until the terms had been explained to them both. "Did anyone acknowledge this?" Priscilla asked. "No, Your Grace. I waited until 7 last night. Then I went to the instruction house myself. They said Mr. Crane had gone and Lady Euphemia wasn't receiving visitors." "Did they tell you the departure would continue?" "They told me the indenture mattered more than my letter." Molly stood 3 paces away. One hand pressed against the lid of a small black trunk. She was pale, with a narrow face and a loose strand of dark hair against her cheek. A folded parchment packet protruded from beneath her cloak. Priscilla turned to Webb. "No girl is to board until the papers have been examined." "Your Grace, the barge master has a schedule. Passage has been paid. I have 4 signed instruments and written authority from the fund." "Then produce them." "The girls carry their employer copies. I was told." The packets were to remain folded until we were beyond London. The words landed with a peculiar weight. Priscilla looked at Molly's parchment. It was folded into a narrow rectangle and tied with plain tape, not sealed. Who gave that instruction? Mr. Crane. Behind them, 2 porters lifted the first trunk. Mrs. Toller caught Molly's arm. Webb stepped forward. Please don't make this more difficult than it is. Put the trunk down, Priscilla said. The porters hesitated. One looked toward the barge master, a weathered man standing near the tiller with an account book tucked beneath his arm. He raised his voice across the quay. We cast off at 11. If there's a quarrel, settle it ashore. Webb gestured toward the gangplank. Load the trunks. Priscilla moved before anyone else did. She crossed the few yards between the girls and the water and placed herself directly before the gangplank. The wharf seemed to notice her all at once. Conversation thinned. Even the nearest horse stopped stamping. Your Grace, Webb said under his breath, this is a public place. So is the removal of 4 girls after a mother has withdrawn consent. You have not seen the indentures. Neither have you. I have written authority. From a man who ordered the documents kept folded. The barge master came down the plank, annoyance giving way to caution as he saw Mrs. Toller's letter. Is the girl properly bound or not? The instrument is disputed, Priscilla said. Her mother objects in writing, and the terms have not been read. He looked at Webb. You told me all 4 were settled. They are. Then show me papers that no one contests. The Duchess herself signed them. The barge master's gaze returned to Priscilla. Did you? I do not yet know what I signed. That answer disturbed him more than a denial would have done. He studied the 4 girls, then the narrow canal ahead. I won't take a disputed apprentice, he said. Not while her mother stands on the quay saying no. I've carried freight for 20 years, and I don't mean to discover at Braunston that I've carried trouble under a noble seal. Webb lowered his voice. You will lose the fare. Better the fare than my license or reputation. He called to the porters. Leave the trunks. Molly released a breath so sharply that Priscilla heard it above the water. The other girls did not move. One looked at Molly, waiting to learn whether relief was permitted. Priscilla stepped away from the gangplank, but remained between the girls and the barge. None of you will leave until the papers are read and your families have been heard. The smallest girl whispered. Will they punish us? No. Mr. Webb said we'd broken our duty if we delayed. Webb stiffened. I said employers would not wait forever. That is not the same thing, Priscilla replied. Hoofbeats sounded beneath the arch. Oliver's carriage entered the basin at speed, followed by a hired chaise. He descended before the wheels fully stopped. Mr. Henshaw came behind him with a leather document case, accompanied by a young parish clerk carrying a receipt book. Oliver's gaze found Priscilla first. He took in her position, the trunks still on the stones, Mrs. Toller's paper, and the 4 girls who had not boarded. He did not come to stand in front of her. He stopped at her side. Has anyone left? He asked. No. The single word changed his face. Relief appeared only for an instant, but Priscilla saw it. Oliver turned to Webb. Mr. Henshaw represents the independent examination of these instruments. The Marylebone overseer has been notified. Until the papers are compared, no apprentice is to be conveyed. Webb lifted his chin. Your Grace, I was acting under Mr. Crane's authority. You will preserve every instruction he gave you. Mr. Henshaw opened his case. The instruments are formally contested. Any carrier who proceeds before examination does so at his own hazard. I will receipt each document and return no original except to its lawful custodian. The barge master nodded once. Then I'm out of it until the parish speaks. Oliver looked toward the girls. They are not to be separated from their families. He glanced at Priscilla before continuing, unless they themselves request a different safe lodging. It was a small correction, but it mattered. He had nearly arranged them before remembering to ask. Priscilla turned to Molly. May I see the paper you carry? Molly touched the folded packet beneath her cloak. Mr. Crane said, I wasn't to open it until we were past London. Do you wish to know what it says? Yes. Then it will be opened here, in your presence, Mr. Henshaw will record who holds it and where it goes afterward. Molly looked at Mrs. Toller. Her mother nodded. With careful fingers, Molly untied the tape and handed the packet to Priscilla. The parchment had been folded several times beneath a stiff outer sheet marbled in green and brown. Priscilla removed the cover and opened the first fold. A clause appeared concerning 7 years of service. The second permitted removal from London. The third allowed transfer to another master without fresh consent from the girl or her mother. At the bottom, beneath all 3 clauses, stood Priscilla's signature. It was not an imitation. The downward stroke of the P, the narrow loop in the second L, and the slight rightward lean were hers. For a moment, the entire wharf seemed to recede. She saw again the committee room, Euphemia's calm voice, Crane's blotter, and a succession of lower panels presented below marbled covers. Oliver did not say her name. He did not offer an explanation she had not asked for. He merely remained beside her while she looked at the damage her hand had made respectable. Mrs. Toller's face had gone white. Is it yours? Priscilla lifted her eyes. Yes, the word cost her, but she gave it cleanly. That is my hand. Molly stared at the signature, then at Priscilla's bare left finger. Did you know? No. How can you prove that? I cannot prove it by asking you to trust me. Priscilla held the parchment open. I can only learn what was placed above my name and who arranged for me not to see it. Mr. Henshaw leaned closer without touching the document. There is an irregular cut along this edge. Molly nodded quickly. The parish man showed us once. He said the 2 copies were cut together so the little teeth should fit. This doesn't look like the one in his office. Oliver's gaze sharpened. Mr. Henshaw took out a blank receipt and began to write. Then we compare them today. Priscilla looked down at the jagged parchment edge. The signature was hers. The paper above it might not have been. By 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning, Copley House had received 3 messengers, 2 parish notes, and 1 husband who would not cross the morning room threshold without permission. Priscilla saw Oliver through the open door from her chair beside the window. He stood in the passage with his hat beneath one arm, formal, enough for a ministerial audience, and uncertain enough for a man who knew the room was not his. Lady Copley sat in the adjoining drawing-room with an embroidery frame across her lap. She had said nothing when Priscilla arrived the previous evening with Anne Mercer and a single travelling case. She had simply ordered the blue bedchamber prepared and told the household that the Duchess of Kellington was not to be disturbed. Now Priscilla looked at Oliver and waited. He did not step inside. May I come in? He asked. You may. Only then did he enter. He stopped near the nearest chair. May I sit? Yes. Oliver lowered himself into the chair opposite hers. Fatigue shadowed his eyes. No leather ring case appeared in his hands. No folded note showed from his pocket. Priscilla was relieved by their absence and wounded by the relief. The 4 girls remained with their families last night. he said. The parish issued a temporary restraint before noon. Mr. Webb delivered every written instruction in his possession to Mr. Henshaw and has agreed not to leave London until questioned, and Molly's indenture. Mr. Henshaw receipted it into his own keeping. It hasn't entered Kellington House. Good. Oliver inclined his head. The other 3 girls who left on the 7th of April are being traced. The wharf clerk has been asked for the booking record. Mr. Henshaw is contacting the parish officers named in the fund register. Do we know where the girls were taken? Only that the route began at Paddington and continued through Braunston. The later destination was abbreviated. Priscilla looked toward the square beyond the glass. 3 girls had passed beyond London while she attended dinners, signed household letters, and thanked subscribers for supporting respectable employment. Their mothers must hear first when anything is learned, she said. Not the subscribers. Not Lady Euphemia. Their mothers. I've given that instruction. Her gaze returned to him. To whom? To Mr. Henshaw. He'll report directly to the families and to you. Not through your secretary. No. Not through Kellington House. No, he answered without impatience. Priscilla folded her hands in her lap. Her bare left finger seemed brighter than the rest of her skin. Oliver's eyes moved toward it once, then back to her face. I owe you an apology, he said. More than one. Begin with yesterday morning. I treated a mother's refusal as disorder to be arranged. I asked you to wait because waiting was convenient for me. I believed summoning the proper men would make delay responsible. And after I left, I acted quickly. That doesn't change what you did before I left. No, the word carried no defense. Going to Paddington didn't erase the fact that you had to leave me behind before I understood the danger. Priscilla had expected an explanation built from exhaustion, politics, habit, or law. His refusal to excuse himself unsettled her more than argument would have done. You still believe order is protection, she said. I believed it yesterday, and today. Oliver looked down at his hands. Today, I believe order can protect the person who controls it while everyone else pays for the delay. The answer was not complete repentance, but it was precise. There is something I must tell you before the documents are compared. I'm listening. 6 weeks earlier, Lady Euphemia had summoned her to the committee room at Kellington House between a subscription meeting and a dinner for one of Oliver's political allies. Priscilla remembered a stack of forms laid upon a walnut-colored surface, though she had not then noticed whether it was a board or part of the desk. Each paper had been folded beneath a stiff marbled cover. Only a lower panel remained exposed. Crane had stood at her right with ink, sand, and blotting paper. Euphemia had explained that the signatures confirmed travel allowances, clothing grants, and placements already accepted by the girls' families. I signed them, Priscilla said. Oliver did not move. How many? I don't know. More than 4, perhaps 7, perhaps more. Shame tightened her throat, but she did not let it soften the fact. I didn't unfold a single form. I didn't ask to see the terms above my name. I believed Euphemia when she said the families had agreed. Were the upper portions sealed? No. Were you prevented from opening them? Not physically. She met his eyes. That matters. It does. I was deceived, but I was also careless. Priscilla, don't rescue me from the sentence. Oliver stopped. The silence was not easy, but he allowed it to remain. The signature on Molly's employer copy is mine, she continued. If the other papers bear my hand, then I must say so before anyone says it for me. I won't let Lady Euphemia turn me into the author of this scheme. I won't let you turn me into a woman who did nothing wrong. Pain crossed his face. What do you require of me? Not what do I permit you to do. No, not what arrangement will restore the household. No. Priscilla studied him, then named the conditions upon which she would take part in the inquiry. All 7 girls are to be traced. The mothers and girls are to be heard before subscribers or patrons receive a version of events. Every original document must remain with the parish officer, solicitor, or other lawful custodian. Nothing is to be kept in your private study or Lady Euphemia's committee room. I will remain at Copley House until I choose otherwise. There will be no statement about a united household for society's comfort. Oliver accepted each condition with a quiet yes. Priscilla came to the last, and you will not declare me blameless. His expression changed. If the evidence proves the terms were concealed, you may say the terms were concealed. You may say the signature was obtained by deception if the evidence proves it. You may not tell the world what responsibility I'm allowed to feel. They'll use your honesty against you. Then let them use what is true. I would rather be judged for the truth than defended by another version of silence. Oliver looked toward the doorway, where Lady Copley's needle moved steadily through linen. When he faced Priscilla again, the authority in him had not vanished. It had been forced to make room. I agree, he said, to all 5 conditions, even if my account damages House Tallis. Especially then. A knock sounded at the front of the house. Moments later, Lady Copley's butler appeared with a sealed note from Mr. Pike, the Marylebone overseer. Oliver did not reach for it. Priscilla broke the seal herself. Molly's parish counterpart had been located under the same reference number as the employer-side indenture. Its terms limited training to London and required guardian approval for travel. More troubling still, the indented edge did not fit the parchment in Mr. Henshaw's custody. Priscilla read the lines twice, then handed the note to Oliver because she chose to. He read without speaking. Someone made 2 instruments under 1 number, he said. Yes. She looked at the open page between them. Someone made 2 truths and expected my name to bind us to the wrong one. On Wednesday, the 6th of May, Molly Toller's employer-side indenture arrived at the Marylebone parish office inside Mr. Henshaw's locked leather case, its transfer recorded in 3 hands before the clasp was opened. The official parish counterpart did not travel at all. Mr. Pike, the overseer, brought it from the iron cupboard in the adjoining records room, and kept one hand upon its lower edge while everyone gathered around the scarred oak table. Priscilla stood opposite him, with Oliver at her right. Mr. Henshaw occupied the end of the table beside his clerk, and Mr. Alderton, the magistrate who had issued the temporary restraint, watched from a straight-backed chair near the window. No servant from Kellington House had been admitted. No document would leave its lawful custodian. The reference number is the same, Mr. Pike said. He read it aloud from each parchment. 47B. Mr. Henshaw opened Molly's copy fully. Priscilla's genuine signature appeared near the foot of the employer-side instrument, beneath the clauses permitting 7 years of service, removal from London, and transfer to another master. The parish counterpart carried no signature from Priscilla. Its lower panel bore only the certification of the parish officer and the mark of Mrs. Toller as guardian. Its terms described training within London and allowed travel only with a guardian's approval. So no one altered a sentence after the parish copy was entered, Oliver said. No, Mr. Henshaw replied. These are 2 separate instruments pretending to be one. Mr. Pike slid his parchment toward the center without releasing it. The cut edge of the parish copy had been made in a wavering pattern of small teeth and hollows. Mr. Henshaw brought Molly's document close. A broad tooth on one faced unbroken parchment on the other. Two narrow hollows met where one should have received a projecting point. He moved neither sheet more than necessary. The failure was obvious before he explained it. They can't have been cut apart from the same original, he said. Not even if one dried differently? Mr. Alderton asked. Not to this degree. Drying may pull an edge. It doesn't invent a new sequence. Priscilla stared at the gap between the papers. The same number had been written at the top of both. One promised London training under a mother's consent. The other carried Priscilla's name beneath terms that could remove Molly beyond her family's reach. The fraud did not depend upon a clumsy imitation of her hand. It depended upon her real hand making the false version respectable. "May I see the fold lines?" she asked. Mr. Henshaw turned Molly's copy so the light reached it. 3 creases crossed the parchment at measured intervals. The deepest lay directly above Priscilla's signature. Another passed beneath the heading. A third would have allowed a stiff cover to hide the clauses while leaving the lower panel exposed. Priscilla held her own hand above the parchment without touching it. "This is how the forms were placed before me." "Are you certain?" Mr. Alderton asked. "I'm certain the lower panels were visible, and the upper portions were covered. I'm not yet certain whether the cover was part of a board, a folder, or some other device. Who was present? Lady Euphemia Grenville and Mr. Bartholomew Crane." Oliver said nothing. The silence gave Priscilla room to answer the next questions without his rank shaping them. Mr. Alderton asked how many forms she had signed, whether the ink had been prepared, whether she had read any heading, and whether anyone had prevented her from unfolding a paper. Priscilla answered each question as precisely as memory allowed. "No one held my hands," she said at last. "No one threatened me. They arranged the papers so that asking to open them would have seemed an accusation against people I trusted. I didn't ask. That failure is mine." Mr. Alderton studied her, "And the concealment, if proved, belongs to the person who designed it." Mr. Henshaw's clerk copied the answer without looking up. Oliver's gaze remained on Priscilla, grave and restrained. He did not soften what she had said. He did not add that she had been hurried between duties or accustomed to Euphemia's authority. Those facts were true, but they did not need to be used as shields. Mr. Pike opened the parish register to the April entries. Reference 47B appeared beside Molly's name, followed by the notation that training was to occur in London. 3 lines earlier stood the names of girls who had already departed on the 7th of April. Each entry used similar wording. Each final destination had been added in a different hand. "Braunston," Mr. Pike read. "Then onward by wagon toward Leicestershire." "Were there employer-side copies lodged here?" Priscilla asked. "No, only the parish counterparts." "Do those counterparts permit removal?" "Not without guardian approval." Mr. Henshaw looked at the 3 earlier entries. "Then we need their employer copies and the guardian's letters." "They've already been contacted," Oliver said. He looked to Priscilla before continuing. "Mr. Henshaw's office sent the notices directly, as you required." She gave one small nod. It was not forgiveness. It was acknowledgement that he had remembered. Mr. Alderton signed a written continuation of the restraint, covering Molly and the other 3 girls whose departure had been halted. The order did not decide the final validity of the instruments. It prevented removal while the parish copies, family objections, and employer papers were examined. Mr. Pike returned his counterpart to the iron cupboard. Mr. Henshaw placed Molly's indenture back into the locked case and signed the custody line beneath the clerk's entry. Nothing remained loose upon the table except the certified notes. On Friday morning, the 8th of May, they returned to the same office to examine the first replies from the other parishes. 2 mothers had preserved copies of letters objecting to removal. A third had asked that her daughter remain in London because a younger child was ill. All 3 letters were dated before the 7th of April. None appeared in the incoming correspondence register of the Kellington Fund. Mr. Pike laid the certified extracts beside the register. 3 objections, 3 missing entries. And 3 girls sent anyway, Priscilla said. A messenger from Paddington arrived before noon, carrying a note from the wharf clerk, Mr. Caleb Morris. 7 passages had been booked under the authority of the Kellington Female Instruction Fund. 4 were scheduled for the 4th of May. 3 had departed on the 7th of April. Every booking had been made in persons by Bartholomew Crane. Oliver reached for the paper at the same moment Priscilla did. Their fingertips brushed over the lower corner. The contact was slight, no more than the warmth of skin through a second of surprise. Oliver withdrew first. He did not apologize for touching her, and he did not turn the accident into permission for anything more. He left the note where it was and waited. Priscilla took it. She read the wharf clerk's final line aloud. Mr. Crane paid each passage in cash and carried sealed committee envelopes bearing the fund's device. Mr. Henshaw looked from the note to the 3 missing objections. Then he controlled the paper, the record, and the journeys. He controlled the movement, Priscilla said. We still don't know who directed him or who profited. Oliver met her eyes across the table. Then that's what we learn next. The smallest warmth from their accidental touch remained in Priscilla's fingers, but the page in her hand had become colder than the room. Crane had not merely copied names into a register. He had personally purchased the road by which 7 girls were meant to disappear from London. 7 girls' names stood in the Paddington Wharf book, and Bartholomew Crane had booked every passage himself. On Saturday, the 9th of May, Mr. Caleb Morris kept the original ledger open upon his own desk, while Mr. Henshaw's clerk copied the entries under witness. The volume did not leave the wharf office. Its worn leather binding remained beneath Morris's hand whenever anyone leaned close enough to read. Priscilla stood across from him, with Oliver at her side and Mr. Henshaw near the window. Outside, canal ropes strained, carts rattled over the stones, and a horse snorted beneath the arch. Inside, the 7 lines made less noise than any of it. 4 passages had been entered for the 4th of May. 3 had been entered for the 7th of April. Each booking bore Crane's name. Each had been paid in cash. He came alone, Priscilla asked. Every time, Morris replied. No mother, no parish officer, no girl until the morning of departure. What authority did he show? Sealed committee envelopes from the Kellington Fund. He said the arrangements were settled and the papers were not to be opened on the quay. Morris turned one page and pointed to a route notation. Saddington to Braunston by canal, then wagon onward toward Leicester and Loughborough. Were the final employers named? Mr. Henshaw asked. Not in full. Receiving agents were to meet the girls after Braunston. Mr. Crane gave the wagoner separate instructions. Do you remember the 3 who left in April? Priscilla asked. Morris's weathered face changed. One wore a red scarf. One asked whether Braunston was near London. The third held a little wooden box so tightly that she would not let the porter place it beneath the seats. The second detail cut deeper than the first. A girl had asked whether her destination was near home, and the adults around her had allowed ignorance to remain useful. "Did anyone answer her?" Priscilla asked. Morris looked down at the ledger. Mr. Crane said she would understand the route soon enough. Oliver's jaw tightened, but he did not interrupt. Priscilla looked again at the April entries. "The families must receive every report before the fund does." "Agreed," Oliver said. He turned to Mr. Henshaw. "We need men in Coventry and Leicester who have never acted for House Tallis, the Kellington Fund, or any receiving manufacturer." Mr. Henshaw considered. "Mr. Nathaniel Price in Coventry has handled canal disputes for parish officers. Mr. Samuel Harcourt in Leicester acts for small tradesmen and dissenting families. Neither has worked for you." Oliver looked at Priscilla before he gave any instruction. "Would those names satisfy you?" "Only if the mothers approve them directly and receive the reports without passing through Kellington House. Then the mothers decide." Morris lifted his brows, perhaps surprised to hear a duke place the choice elsewhere. Oliver continued, "Their fees will be paid from my private account. No condition is attached to the payment." "Make that clear in writing," Priscilla said. "I will." Mr. Henshaw's clerk completed the extracts. Morris read each line aloud, corrected one miscopied figure, then signed beneath the statement that the original remained in company custody. Priscilla asked for no more than the ledger could prove. It established 7 passages, 2 departure dates, a canal route, cash payments, and Crane's personal presence. It did not yet establish who had ordered him, where the girls had finally been placed, or what money had changed hands beyond the fair. She would not fill those gaps with suspicion, even when suspicion pointed toward Euphemia. On Monday, the 11th of May, the Marylebone Parish Office had grown close before noon. Mr. Pike's register lay open beneath the grey light, and 3 certified extracts from family letters rested beside it. The letters had been written on the 2nd, 4th, and 5th of April. All 3 predated the departure on the 7th. One mother had refused removal from London. Another had asked for delay because a younger child was ill. The third had withdrawn consent entirely. None of the objections appeared in the Kellington Fund's incoming correspondence register. Mr. Pike ran one finger down the numbered column. Entries 42 through 44 are absent. "Were pages removed?" Oliver asked. "No, the book is intact. The numbers were simply skipped." "Who initialed the surrounding entries?" Priscilla asked. Mr. Pike angled the register toward her. B. C. Crane's initials appeared above and below the missing sequence. Priscilla did not say his guilt was proved. She looked instead at the 3 mothers' copies and the dates beneath their signatures. "We know he controlled the correspondence record," she said. "We know he booked the passages. We know the objections were not entered. We don't yet know who directed the concealment or where the premiums led." "That distinction may not survive gossip," Oliver said. "It must survive us." He met her eyes. "It will." The room had become stifling. One of the upper windows stood swollen in its frame, sealed by old paint and damp. Oliver rose without comment, crossed to it, and worked the latch loose with both hands. The sash lifted a few inches. Cooler air moved into the room. He returned, not to his former place beside Priscilla, but to the darker chair farther from the opening. The better seat remained empty until he drew it slightly toward her. "You'll hear the clerk more clearly from there," he said. Priscilla knew the reason was not sound. The gesture asked nothing from her. It did not demand gratitude, forgiveness, or notice. She moved to the chair near the open window. "Thank you." Oliver sat in the hotter place and opened the next report. Mr. Henshaw arrived shortly afterward with replies from the three mothers. All approved Mr. Price and Mr. Harcourt. Each requested daily notice, even when the notice contained no progress. "Then they'll receive one every day," Priscilla said. "Not a summary when the men have something pleasing to report." "Every day," Oliver agreed, "even if the message says only that the search continues." By Tuesday afternoon, the 12th of May, the first northern replies had arrived. Mr. Price confirmed that the three girls had travelled from Paddington to Braunston. A wagon carrier remembered collecting them there under sealed instructions. He had delivered them to separate receiving agents near Leicester and Loughborough. Mr. Harcourt had begun inquiries among workshop owners and parish officers. No girl had yet been brought home, but all three routes had narrowed. One receiving agent denied handling apprentices from London. Another admitted receiving a girl, but claimed she had been transferred onward after 2 days. The third had not answered. They were divided, Priscilla said. That made it harder for families to find them, and harder for the girls to compare what they'd been told. Mr. Henshaw replied. Oliver read the Leicester report twice. "Can the solicitors visit each place without warning?" "Yes," Mr. Henshaw said. "With the family's consent already recorded, then they should." Priscilla looked toward him. "And any girl who wants to return must be told that her lodging and journey don't depend upon giving evidence. I'll add it." Before the letter could be drafted, a messenger from Kellington House entered carrying a sealed note from the steward. Crane had not returned to his lodgings since the morning of the 6th of May. His office remained locked under Mr. Henshaw's earlier instruction. No desk, cabinet, or correspondence box had been opened. The steward had looked only through an already open inner compartment while checking whether ink or candles posed a hazard. He had seen numbered forms, a packet of unopened letters, and a flat walnut board fitted with 2 brass clips. Priscilla read the final line aloud. "The board bears 3 grooves at measured intervals and a stiff, marbled cover fixed along one side." The air from the open window moved across the paper in her hand. 6 weeks earlier, she had signed beneath marbled covers while Crane stood ready with ink. Now the man had vanished, and the device that might explain her signature waited behind a sealed office door. On Wednesday, the 13th of May, the door to Bartholomew Crane's office was unlocked in the presence of Mr. Henshaw, the Kellington steward, Mr. Pike, as parish witness, Oliver, and Priscilla. The room occupied the rear ground floor of Kellington House and looked toward a narrow service court beneath high brick walls. Nothing within it appeared dramatic. Crane's coat remained on a peg. An uncapped ink bottle stood beside his sand shaker. A sheet of figures lay beneath a paperweight, as though he had expected to return before luncheon. Yet the flat walnut board in the open inner compartment drew Priscilla's eye before any drawer was touched. It was fitted with 2 brass clips, 3 measured grooves, and a stiff marbled cover fixed along one side. She had seen that pattern before without understanding it. "Record the board first," she said. Mr. Henshaw nodded to his clerk. The steward described its position and condition. Only after the entry had been read aloud did Mr. Henshaw lift the board onto the high desk. Lady Euphemia had not yet been admitted. Oliver had insisted the first examination proceed before anyone with an interest in the outcome could disturb the room. A blank committee form from the same compartment was selected and listed. Mr. Henshaw placed it beneath the brass clips. The upper sheet lay fully visible until he folded it along the first groove. At once, the stiff marbled cover concealed the opening clauses. A second fold hid the heading and reference description. The third exposed only the lower panel where a signature would be placed. When the clips were pressed down, their edges left 2 faint rectangular marks near the upper corners. Priscilla looked at the visible panel and remembered Crane placing the pen in her hand. She remembered Euphemia saying that the families had agreed, that the placements were settled, that only allowances and travel arrangements required confirmation. What she had mistaken for efficiency now stood before her as design. "That's how the forms were presented," she said. "With the upper words hidden?" Mr. Pike asked. "Yes." The lower panel stayed visible. The marbled cover lay above it. Oliver's gaze moved from the board to her face. He did not speak. Mr. Henshaw measured the grooves and compared them with the certified notes taken from Molly Toller's employer-side indenture. They corresponded. He recorded only what the board established. A form placed upon it could be folded so the upper terms disappeared while the signature panel remained exposed. The clips could produce marks like those observed on Molly's parchment. "It proves a method," Priscilla said. "It doesn't yet prove who ordered it." "Correct," Mr. Henshaw replied. The steward opened the desk drawers one at a time. The first contained ordinary household accounts. The second held duplicate reference slips, several with numbers matching the apprenticeship register. The third was locked. Its key lay beneath the inkstand, wrapped in paper initialed BC. Inside were 3 sealed letters addressed to the Kellington Female Instruction Fund. Mrs. Toller's name appeared on one. The other 2 came from mothers whose daughters had left London on the 7th of April. Each seal was inspected before the letters were opened. Each delivery date preceded the relevant departure. The first withdrew consent. The second asked that removal be delayed because a younger child was ill. The third refused any placement outside London. Beneath the letters lay a narrow schedule listing 7 girls, 7 reference numbers, and premiums larger than the usual sums entered in the parish books. 3 April names bore red docket marks matching the witnessed extracts from the Paddington Wharf ledger. These objections were in his locked drawer while he booked the journeys, Mr. Pike said. "Yes," Priscilla answered. "That establishes possession. We still need to know whose instruction he followed and where the excess premiums went." Oliver looked at the schedule. "Can the receiving accounts be traced?" "If the payments entered a bank or creditor's office," Mr. Henshaw said. "Cash may take longer." "Then follow every amount without assuming the destination." Priscilla heard the correction in Oliver's phrasing. He did not tell the solicitor what conclusion to find. Lady Euphemia arrived before noon, dressed in dove-grey silk with a black lace shawl over one arm. She paused at the sight of the board and recovered so quickly that another observer might have missed the interruption in her step. "This room belongs to the Kellington household," she said. "It's being inventoried under witnessed authority," Oliver replied. "Nothing's been removed without record. A folding board is hardly evidence of wickedness. Clerks use such things to keep forms orderly." Priscilla turned toward her. "Did you see this one used?" "I've seen Crane arrange papers upon it." "Did you see him conceal the upper clauses?" "No." "Did you know the mothers had objected?" Euphemia's expression sharpened. "Poor women object to distance once departure becomes real. That doesn't mean every placement must collapse." These letters were never entered. Then Crane failed in his clerical duty. He also booked every passage himself, because that was his work. Euphemia looked at the premium schedule, and keeping accounts was his work as well. The amounts are nearly double the ordinary premium in 3 cases, Mr. Henshaw said. Mr. Crane will answer for his figures when he's found. You speak as though he acted alone, Priscilla said. I speak as though you've found one missing secretary, his board, his records, and his omissions. You haven't found an order from me. The statement was carefully true. Priscilla could not yet prove Euphemia had directed the concealment. The absence of proof did not make the woman's calm less chilling. Priscilla placed one hand upon the edge of the desk. A small tremor passed through her fingers before she could stop it. Oliver saw. He did not reach for her at once. "May I?" he asked. The question was quiet enough that only those nearest heard it. Priscilla looked at his open hand, then placed her fingertips against his palm. His hand remained beneath hers, steady and warm, without closing around it. For several breaths, the room continued its work. The clerk listed the letters. Mr. Pike copied the delivery dates. Mr. Henshaw folded clean paper around the premium schedule. Oliver asked for nothing. When the tremor eased, Priscilla withdrew. He released the contact immediately. "I should have protected you," he began, then stopped. The old sentence would have placed him at the center again. "No," he said more quietly. "I should have listened before protection was needed." Priscilla met his eyes. The words did not repair the past, but they did not hide from it. Mr. Henshaw wrapped the walnut board in clean cloth, tied it, and sealed the knots before all witnesses. The objection letters, premium schedule, duplicate reference slips, and sample form were placed in separate packets. Every item was transferred to his custody under signed receipt. The registers remained with their lawful keepers. Nothing entered Oliver's study. Nothing remained available for Euphemia to alter. She watched the seals being impressed, then lifted her shawl from the chair. "The annual examination will proceed on Tuesday," she said. Oliver turned. "That decision isn't yours alone. The invitations have gone. Subscribers will attend. Mothers will attend. Cancelling it now would advertise guilt." "Perhaps guilt should be advertised," Priscilla said. Euphemia's gaze settled upon her bare left hand. "Then you'll answer for it publicly. I've already ordered 4 chairs placed upon the dais for the girls whose departure you stopped. They aren't exhibits. No, they're absences." Euphemia moved toward the door. The printed notice asks only one question. Why did the Duchess of Kellington sign their indentures? She left before anyone answered. By Friday, the 17th of May, copies of that notice had reached subscribers across London. At the center of the page stood Priscilla's title, larger than the names of the 4 girls beneath it. On Tuesday, the 19th of May, 4 empty chairs stood upon the dais at the Kellington Female Instruction House, each marked with the name of a girl whose departure had been halted before anyone in the room had been told what the empty places meant. The chairs were narrow, plain, and set beneath a painted board announcing the annual examination of pupils and apprentices. Their absence drew the eye more sharply than Lady Euphemia's arrangements of greenery or the neat rows of copybooks displayed for subscribers. Mothers filled the 2nd and 3rd benches. Parish officers stood near the walls. Several women of rank occupied the front row, along with gentlemen who had praised the fund's discipline without ever visiting a girl after she left London. Priscilla entered through the side passage with Lady Copley. She wore dark blue silk without ornament, and the absence of her wedding ring showed whenever she removed one glove. Conversation lowered around her. It did not cease. Oliver stood across the room beside Mrs. Agnes Bell, Sir Edmund Rook, and Mr. Henshaw. He had offered to meet Priscilla at the entrance that morning. She had declined, and he had accepted the answer. Now he watched her take her place without crossing to escort her. Lady Euphemia waited at the center of the dais in black silk, composed enough to suggest that the gathering had unfolded exactly as she intended. Bartholomew Crane remained missing. The walnut board, the mother's letters, and the premium schedule were sealed in Mr. Henshaw's custody. Molly Toller's employer-side indenture had been brought under receipt for temporary presentation. Nothing else would be placed before the subscribers until the magistrate permitted it. Euphemia raised one hand. Before the usual demonstrations begin, several families have requested clarification concerning the postponement of placements. Her voice made the scandal sound like a matter of poor scheduling. Her Grace, the Duchess of Kellington, has chosen to attend and answer. Priscilla felt the trap close with perfect courtesy. The printed question had already named her. The 4 chairs had already made the girls into symbols. The mothers had been brought into a room, prepared to judge before they had been told what the inquiry had found. The mothers should speak first, Priscilla said. Euphemia smiled. Naturally. Mrs. Toller? Mrs. Toller rose from the second bench. Fear had reddened her eyes, but her hands were steady. Mr. Henshaw's clerk stepped forward, recorded the temporary transfer, and placed Molly's indenture in her hands. She held the parchment high enough for the room to see Priscilla's signature at the foot. "Your Grace," she said, "why is your name on the paper that was meant to send my daughter away after I said no?" The room became utterly still. Priscilla could hear the faint crackle of the parchment in Mrs. Toller's grip. She might have begun with the mismatched edge, the hidden clauses, or the board found in Crane's office. She might have protected herself with the evidence before giving the room the fact it wanted. Instead, she said, "The signature is mine." A woman in the front row drew a sharp breath. A gentleman behind her whispered, "Then she knew." Another answered, "Or regrets being found out." Euphemia did not quiet them. Mrs. Toller looked as if she had expected denial and found the truth more frightening. Priscilla stepped toward the front edge of the dais. I signed a lower panel that had been shown to me beneath a stiff, marbled cover. I was told the forms concerned allowances and placements already accepted by the families. I did not unfold the papers. I did not read the terms concealed above my name. "But you signed," a male subscriber called. "Yes. Then what protection is a ducal signature if the Duchess does not know what it binds?" The question struck because it was fair. Priscilla did not evade it. "None," she said. "A signature without knowledge protects only the people who arranged the ignorance." A slight movement disturbed the front row. One patroness, who had once praised Priscilla's judgment, quietly shifted her chair several inches away from the aisle nearest the dais. The gesture was small, almost polite, and more cutting than open insult. Mrs. Toller lowered the parchment. "Did you know they meant to take Molly north?" "No." "Would you have signed if you had known?" "No." "Then why should I trust any woman who can be made not to know?" Priscilla felt every eye in the room turn toward her bare hand. "You should not trust my title," she said. "You should judge what I do now that I know." Euphemia stepped forward. "It would be irresponsible to present supposition as proof. The matter remains under inquiry. The parish counterpart carries the same reference number but different terms." Priscilla replied. Its edge does not match Molly's employer-side copy. The board capable of concealing the upper clauses was found in Mr. Crane's office, beside unopened objections from the mothers. A murmur passed through the benches. Euphemia's expression cooled, and yet your hand remains upon the disputed instrument. Yes, that is why I am here. Another mother rose without waiting to be called. My letter was sent before my daughter left on the 7th of April. No one answered me. A second stood beside her. I agreed to training in London. I never agreed to Leicester. The room broke into overlapping voices. One gentleman demanded Priscilla resign. A patroness declared that she had been victimized by dishonest clerks. Another woman said the fund's enemies would use the scandal to destroy all charitable work. Every judgment arrived before the mothers had finished. Oliver moved. He crossed the open floor with the controlled speed of a man accustomed to ending disorder by occupying its center. Priscilla saw his intention before he spoke. He meant to stop the cruelty. He meant to protect her from a room that had begun turning her into whatever version best suited each listener. He also meant to decide which version would remain. Enough, he said. His rank cut through the noise silence. Fell. Oliver stood beside Priscilla without touching her. The Duchess was deceived. She bears no blame for instruments whose terms were concealed from her. From this moment, I will assume sole control of the inquiry. All questions will be directed to me. Relief crossed several faces. The story had become simple. A blameless wife, a corrupt secretary, a powerful duke restoring order. Priscilla felt something inside her become very still. Oliver turned toward her with the graven certainty of a man who believed he had given safety. She looked at him and said, clearly enough for the last bench to hear, "You do not restore my voice by declaring me innocent before I have spoken." His expression changed. The authority in it faltered. "Priscilla, I'm trying to stop them from condemning you by deciding what I'm allowed to admit." "That isn't what I meant. It is what you did." She stepped away before he could offer his arm. His hand moved once, then stopped at his side. Priscilla descended from the dais and crossed to the mothers. She sat in an empty place beside Mrs. Toller, level with the women whose questions Euphemia had arranged as weapons. "Please continue," she said. "Tell us when you wrote, what you consented to, and what answer you received." Mrs. Toller sat slowly. One by one the mothers spoke. A widow described a letter never acknowledged. Another produced her retained copy. A third admitted she had agreed to work in London, but not removal. Priscilla asked no question designed to protect herself. She wrote dates, names, and exact wording. Oliver remained standing upon the dais, where everyone could see that the Duke of Kellington had been denied the right to finish his wife's account. He did not interrupt again. When the last mother had spoken, Mrs. Toller looked down at Molly's indenture. "I'm not ready to forgive anyone," she said. "You're not required to," Priscilla answered. Mrs. Toller turned to Mr. Henshaw's clerk and returned the parchment with both hands. The clerk entered the time of return, placed the indenture back inside the document case, and sealed the clasp before the room dispersed. No applause followed. Some subscribers called Priscilla courageous. Others called her negligent. A more dangerous few repeated Euphemia's phrase that the Duchess had publicly admitted guilt. As Priscilla left with Lady Copley, she heard Euphemia say behind her, "Truth has not made you safe." Priscilla did not turn. It was never meant to. That evening, after the last light had faded, over Bedford Square, Oliver arrived at Copley House, carrying a leather ring case in one hand and the original breakfast note in the other. He stopped outside the morning room threshold and waited until Priscilla looked up. "May I come in?" he asked. Priscilla looked from Oliver's face to the leather ring case in one hand and the original breakfast note in the other. The morning room at Copley House had darkened enough for candles. Lady Copley sat in the adjoining drawing room with an open book upon her lap, close enough to preserve propriety, and far enough to leave husband and wife alone with what had happened between them. Oliver remained outside the threshold. "You may come in," Priscilla said. He entered, placed the ring case and the unfolded note side by side upon the small table, then remained standing until she indicated the seat opposite. "I didn't come to ask you to wear it," he said. "Then why bring it?" "Because both belong to you." Priscilla looked at the note. Her own hand crossed the page in the same firm lines she had written before leaving Kellington House. It had not been folded. "You kept them together in my private writing desk." His mouth tightened. "I told myself I was keeping them safe. That wasn't the whole truth." "What was?" "I kept the ring because holding it made me feel the marriage was still where I had left it. I kept the note because it was the first truth you had given me that I couldn't arrange into something easier." He sat. Only after she did. Both reasons were selfish. Priscilla did not touch either object. "You spoke for me today." "Yes, you declared me blameless before I had explained what responsibility I believed was mine." "Yes, you claimed sole control of an inquiry I had required to be independent." "Yes." He accepted each failure without defense. "I saw the room turn against you," he said. "I saw people preparing to condemn you. And I did what I have always done when disorder threatens someone under my protection. I took control. You made me into a symbol of your judgment. I did. A blameless duchess defended by a powerful husband. Yes." His voice dropped. It was a kinder silence than the one at breakfast, but it was silence all the same. The accuracy of the sentence struck more sharply than apology alone. Priscilla folded her hands in her lap. Her left hand remained bare. "When did you understand?" "When you stepped away from me, and when you sat among the mothers. I had ordered the room to direct every question to me. You answered by choosing where you would sit. You offered your arm, and you refused it. Did that anger you?" "It frightened me." Priscilla lifted her eyes. Oliver met them. "Not because people saw you refuse me. Because I understood that I had repeated the very injury I meant to stop. I had made obedience the price of protection." Outside, a carriage passed through Bedford Square and faded. Oliver left the ring case and note untouched. "Mr. Henshaw has drawn new instructions," he said. "The originals in his keeping will remain there under witnessed receipt. Mrs. Agnes Bell and Sir Edmund Rook will countersign every transfer. Parish papers will remain with parish officers. The wharf ledger will remain with Mr. Morris. No disputed original will enter Kellington House. And the inquiry? I won't direct it alone. Mrs. Bell understands parish accounts and has no patience for rank. Sir Edmund has opposed me often enough that no one can call him dependent upon my favour. You chose a man who has opposed you? I chose someone I can't silence by accident." The smallest change touched Priscilla's expression, though it was not yet a smile. "And the subscribers who heard you? They'll receive a written correction tomorrow. It will state that I spoke beyond my authority, that the inquiry remains under independent supervision, and that no conclusion about your responsibility will be issued in your name without your consent. No claim that I bear no blame. No claim about your conscience made by anyone but you." Priscilla looked down at the note. What did you mean when you said you've always taken control when disorder threatens? Oliver was silent long enough that she wondered whether he would retreat into reserve. Then he said, "When I was 12, my father's debts became public. Creditors came to Walcott Park," servants whispered. "My mother wept behind locked doors. Euphemia told me families like ours survived only when one version of events was presented and every other version suppressed. She said uncertainty was rot. If it entered one room, it would spread through the house." "She taught you that?" "She taught me to call it discipline. By 16, I had learned to reduce every crisis to a statement, an order, and a person responsible for enforcing both. It served the estates. It served politics. I believed it would serve marriage. A marriage cannot be an official statement. I know that now. Do you? I know I treated your calm as evidence of agreement. I praised your judgment while reserving the right to replace it whenever the consequences frightened me." His voice roughened, then steadied. "I have wanted your trust more than I have behaved as though you possessed a choice." Priscilla did not answer at once. This was not forgiveness or proof that he would remember the lesson when fear returned. Yet it was the first time Oliver had shown her the machinery beneath his control, instead of asking her to admire the order it produced. He placed one hand upon the table, palm open. He did not move it toward her or turn the gesture into a request. The hand simply rested between them, offered without claim. Priscilla looked at it. Then she placed her own hand in his. Oliver's fingers closed carefully around hers. He held her without urgency, as though reassurance could not be seized, only received. For several quiet minutes, neither spoke. "I'm still angry with you," Priscilla said. "I know. I don't know when I'll return. I know, and I won't accept changed words without changed conduct. You shouldn't." His thumb remained still against the side of her hand. When Priscilla released him, Oliver opened his fingers at once. She drew the ring case and breakfast note toward herself. The note went first into her reticule. The case followed, still unopened. "It was yours before it became my reassurance," he said. "Don't make it yours again until you choose it. I'm not choosing it tonight. I didn't expect you to." A knock sounded at the outer door. Lady Copley returned moments later carrying a sealed dispatch from Mr. Henshaw. Priscilla broke the seal while Oliver remained seated. The Northern solicitor had located Sarah Dobson near Leicester. She was 17, alive, and willing to return to London under the escort of the solicitor's married sister. 2 other girls had also been traced. One was near Loughborough. The third had been transferred to a smaller workshop several miles beyond Leicester. Both were being asked directly whether they wished to return and whether they would speak. Their lodging, return journeys, and future placement would not depend upon testimony. At the bottom of the page, Mr. Henshaw added one final line. Sarah still possessed her employer-side indenture, kept inside a small wooden box since the day she left London. Priscilla read the sentence. Twice, Oliver did not reach for the dispatch. "Would you like me to read it?" she asked. "Only if you choose to share it." She handed him the page. He read in silence, then returned it. She kept the paper, perhaps because it was the only proof anyone had allowed her to possess. Priscilla closed her reticule over the ring, the note, and the dispatch. 3 girls had been found. One was coming home. The others had been given a choice at last. Across the table, Oliver waited without asking what that choice might mean for him. They said, "You'd read every word." Sarah Dobson spoke before anyone had properly settled in the morning room at Copley House on Wednesday, the 27th of May. She was 17, slight from fatigue rather than illness, and dressed in a plain travelling gown beneath a borrowed cloak. A married sister of the northern solicitor had escorted her from Leicestershire by staged carriage over 3 days, allowing stops whenever Sarah asked for them. The girl still held a small wooden box against her ribs. She had refused to place it beneath the carriage seat. Lady Copley sat near the window. Mrs. Agnes Bell occupied the writing table with fresh paper before her. Mr. Henshaw stood beside a locked document case. Oliver had accompanied Priscilla as far as the hall, then remained outside the interview because Priscilla had asked him to do so. Sarah had seen him before the door closed. Her shoulders had tightened at once. "You don't have to speak before His Grace," Priscilla said. "You don't have to speak before anyone you haven't chosen." Sarah looked toward the closed door. "He's still the Duke." "Yes," they said. The Duke and Duchess both knew where we were going. That was not true. They said your signature proved it. Priscilla felt the familiar shame tighten beneath her ribs. She did not turn from it. "The signature on your employer-side indenture is mine." Sarah's eyes narrowed. Then part of it was true. Yes. Mrs. Bell's pen remained still. No one softened the answer. Sarah set the wooden box upon her lap, but kept both hands around it. "Why did you sign?" The upper portion of the paper was hidden beneath a stiff, marbled cover. I was told the forms concerned allowances and placements already accepted by the families. I signed the lower panels without unfolding them. "You should looked." Yes, the word changed something in Sarah's face. She had prepared herself for rank to explain why its failure did not count. Priscilla gave her no such escape. "I was deceived," she continued. "I was also careless. My name made the papers appear honorable. I am sorry for the harm that caused you." "Are you sorry because people found out?" "No." "Are you sorry because the Duke is angry?" "He is not the person I owe this apology to." Sarah glanced toward Lady Copley, perhaps searching for a sign that she had gone too far. Lady Copley only folded her hands. "My mother wrote that she didn't want me sent north," Sarah said. "Her objection was found unopened in Mr. Crane's office. I wrote home twice after I arrived." "Did the letters leave the workshop?" "I don't know. The overseer collected every letter. He said apprentices shouldn't trouble their families with complaints." Her fingers pressed into the wooden box. "They read the rules on the first morning. They never read the indenture. Not in London. Not after." "Were you ever permitted to see it?" Mr. Henshaw asked. Sarah looked at Priscilla before answering him. Priscilla nodded. "Only when they wanted to remind me I couldn't leave. They showed me the bottom where Her Grace had signed. They said that ended every argument." Priscilla's bare left hand rested against her skirt. It should not have, but it did. Yes, Sarah opened the wooden box. Inside lay a folded handkerchief, 2 letters addressed to her mother, a narrow piece of blue ribbon, and the parchment packet she had carried from London. "Another girl told me papers were the only thing people like you believed." The accusation was fair enough that Priscilla did not answer it with reassurance. Mr. Henshaw stepped no closer than necessary. "May I record that you produced the indenture from your own box?" "Yes." "May I examine it in your presence and receipt it into my keeping?" "Will I get it back?" "You will receive a written record of every transfer. It will not enter Kellington House. The original will be preserved until the magistrates decide what must be done with it." Sarah considered this, then passed the packet to him. Mrs. Bell witnessed the transfer. Mr. Henshaw opened the parchment upon a cleared table. He did not reconstruct the entire fraud again. He noted only what had already been established as significant. The employer-side copy bore Priscilla's genuine signature. Its folds matched the known pattern created by the walnut board. A red docket number appeared beside Sarah's name when the parish officer from Sarah's London district presented the official counterpart under his own hand. The irregular edges failed to match. The counterpart carried the same reference number, different terms, and no signature from Priscilla. "The method is the same," Mr. Henshaw said. "That is enough for today." Sarah stared at the two instruments. "The parish one says London." "Yes," Priscilla replied. "The paper you carried allowed removal and transfer. My mother never agreed to that." "No, did you? Not knowingly? That isn't the same as no." Priscilla held her gaze. "You are right." The silence that followed was not hostile. It was difficult, which made it more honest. Sarah looked down at the letters in her box. "What happens if I speak at the hearing?" "You may submit a witnessed statement," Priscilla said. "You may appear. You may decide later. Your lodging, return journey, and future employment will not depend upon testimony. And if I do speak, you will speak before I do." Mr. Henshaw looked up, but Priscilla continued. "The girls and mothers will not be arranged around my defense. Your experience comes first. My explanation follows." Sarah's mouth tightened. "Will the Duke stand up and say you're blameless again?" News of the public examination had travelled farther than Priscilla had expected. "No." "How do you know?" "Because I told him not to speak for me, and he has agreed. Dukes agree until they're frightened." Priscilla thought of Oliver crossing the room at the examination, convinced that control was protection. That has been true of this Duke. He is learning that agreement must survive fear before it becomes trust. Sarah studied her for several seconds. "I don't forgive you yet. You are not required to. But I think I believe you came back." The words did not absolve Priscilla. They asked more of her than easy forgiveness would have done. "Thank you for saying only what you mean." Sarah closed the wooden box. "I want to think about speaking." "Then think." "And my next place?" "There will be no next place arranged without your knowledge. Every term must be read aloud to you and your guardian. You will receive a true copy before any signature is accepted." Sarah nodded once. When the interview ended, Oliver did not enter the room. He waited in the hall while Sarah and her escort departed, standing far enough from the carriage door that the girl did not have to pass close to him. Only after the carriage turned from Bedford Square did Mr. Henshaw return with two new reports. The second, Northern apprentice, had agreed to leave the workshop near Loughborough and was expected in London on the 7th of June. She wished to give a written statement, but had not decided whether she would appear publicly. The third girl, transferred to a smaller workshop several miles beyond Leicester, had been found with an aunt willing to escort her home. They were expected on the 9th. Both girls had been told that return, lodging, and future placement did not depend upon evidence. "All three will be in London before the hearing," Priscilla said. "If the roads hold," Mr. Henshaw replied. "And if they change their minds, then their choice stands." After the others withdrew, Priscilla remained alone in the morning room. The interview had left her too weary for another conversation. A quarter-hour later, Anne Mercer opened the door and placed a covered tray upon the floor outside. "His Grace thought you might still need luncheon," she said. "He said you asked to be alone." There was no note and no request attached to the gesture. Priscilla looked at the tray, then opened the door. Oliver stood at the far end of the passage, speaking quietly with Mr. Henshaw. He turned at the sound. Oliver. He approached, but stopped several feet away. Yes, the tea will be cold if you leave it there. Something softened in his face. I expect it already is. Then you may help me finish it before it becomes entirely undrinkable. He entered only after she stepped aside. They sat opposite each other without touching. The tea was indeed cold, and the bread had dried at the edges. When Oliver tried it and failed to hide his reaction, a brief laugh escaped Priscilla. His answering smile was quiet and almost uncertain. It asked for nothing. For several minutes they spoke of Sarah rather than themselves. Then Mr. Henshaw returned with a sealed letter delivered through another solicitor. Bartholomew Crane offered a confession. He would claim that he had designed the entire scheme alone, and that Priscilla had never seen any form at all. In return, Oliver must guarantee him passage abroad, abandon recovery of his commissions, and ensure that Lady Euphemia Grenville was never named. On the 1st of June, Mr. Henshaw placed Bartholomew Crane's proposal upon the morning-room table at Copley House and asked Priscilla whether she wished Oliver to remain while it was read. Yes, she said. Oliver took the chair opposite her, close enough to hear without leaning across the paper and far enough to leave the decision visibly in her hands. Mrs. Agnes Bell sat near the window with a notebook closed upon her lap. Mr. Henshaw broke the solicitor's seal and unfolded 3 pages covered in a narrow professional hand. Crane would confess that he had designed the false employer-side indentures, arranged the concealed folds, suppressed the mother's objections, booked the passages, and diverted the inflated premiums. He would also swear that Priscilla had never seen any form before the inquiry began. In exchange, Oliver must guarantee him passage abroad, abandon recovery of his commissions, and ensure that Lady Euphemia Grenville was neither named nor questioned in any public or legal proceeding. The offer had been written to appear complete. It gave the world a guilty clerk, an innocent duchess, and a duke who could close the matter with one controlled statement. Priscilla recognized the temptation because it had been designed for Oliver as carefully as the folding board had been designed for her. It would clear your name at once, Mrs. Bell said, not as advice, but as fact. It would clear a woman who doesn't exist, Priscilla replied. Oliver's gaze remained on her. Tell us why. Because I did see forms. I did sign them. I failed to unfold them. She rested one finger beside Crane's proposal. If he swears I never saw a paper, he'll be lying to make me easier to defend. The fraud would still be his, Mr. Henshaw said. Yes, but the carelessness was mine. Priscilla looked at Oliver. If I accept this bargain, the girls become evidence in a story where the only purpose of truth is to keep me spotless. Oliver did not answer at once. Before the public examination, he might have seized the confession, suppressed the uncertainty, and called the result protection. Now he looked at the 3 pages, as though every gracious sentence might contain another hidden clause. Then we refuse it, he said. Mr. Henshaw lifted his pen. Without negotiation, Oliver turned to Priscilla. Is that your decision? The question mattered more than the answer. Yes. No passage. No purchased silence. No promise concerning Lady Euphemia. If Crane wishes to confess, he may confess without deciding which truth survives. Oliver faced the solicitor. Write exactly that, and preserve the offer, Priscilla added. It shows what he believed His Grace would value most. Oliver accepted the rebuke without flinching. He wasn't entirely wrong about the man I was. The question is whether he is wrong now. He is. Over the next 4 days, the premium trail began to take shape. Mr. Henshaw compared the schedule found in Crane's office with certified receipts from a creditor's firm in St. James's. 3 inflated payments had been applied to obligations belonging to the late Earl of Grenville's estate. 2 receipts bore Lady Euphemia's endorsement. A third carried Crane's initials and a direction that the balance be credited toward the lease of Grenville House. None proved by itself that Euphemia had known how Priscilla's signature was obtained. Together, they destroyed her claim that Crane's accounts had been ordinary clerical business beyond her notice. On the afternoon of the 5th of June, Lady Euphemia came to Copley House without sending word ahead. Lady Copley received her in the drawing-room, but Euphemia asked to speak with Priscilla and Oliver together. Oliver had arrived minutes earlier with certified copies of the receipts. He did not assume Priscilla wanted him present. "Shall I go?" he asked. "No," she said. "Stay. But let her answer me." Euphemia entered in lavender silk, greeted Lady Copley, acknowledged Oliver with a slight inclination of her head, and looked first at Priscilla's bare hand before taking the offered chair. "You have received Crane's theatrical proposal," she said. "We have," Priscilla answered, and rejected it. Something sharpened behind Euphemia's composure. "Then you are more foolish than I believed." "Because I won't accept a lie that makes me look innocent?" "Because innocence is granted once. A woman who refuses it may discover that honesty offers no protection." Neither did silence. Euphemia laid her gloves across her lap. "You speak as though those girls were being sent to ruin. They were being sent to work, under terms hidden from them and their families. Poverty contains harsher terms than any indenture. Need does not turn coercion into mercy. That is a graceful sentence from a duchess seated in Bedford Square." Priscilla held her gaze. "It is also true." Euphemia looked toward Oliver. "You understand the world better than she does. Grenville obligations existed before this marriage. The instruction fund placed girls in useful employment and supplied commissions that kept respectable houses from collapse." Oliver did not answer for Priscilla. "She asked you a question," he said. "I'm waiting for your answer to her." Euphemia's mouth thinned. "And you have become obedient?" "No, I have become aware that interruption is not leadership." Priscilla placed the copied receipts upon the table one by one. 3 premium transfers were applied to Grenville debts. 2 carry your endorsement. 1 supported the lease of Grenville House. Euphemia glanced at the papers and away. "Crane handled payments at my request." "Did you instruct him to conceal the upper clauses?" "No." "Did you order the mother's objections withheld?" "No." "Did you know the girls would leave London after consent had been withdrawn?" The pause lasted only a breath. It was enough. "I knew some families had become uncertain," Euphemia said. "Poor women are often uncertain when opportunity requires distance." "That was not your decision to make. Someone had to make it." Priscilla saw the full shape of Euphemia's belief. The woman did not consider herself cruel. She considered consent an inconvenience created by people too poor or frightened to understand their own advantage. "No," Priscilla said. "Someone had to ask. Someone had to explain. Someone had to hear the answer. You did none of those things." Euphemia rose. "At sessions, your signature will be read aloud before magistrates. Society will remember the name beneath the clauses long after it forgets the folds." "I know. Then accept Crane's confession. Let him go. Spare this family." "You mean spare your creditors." Euphemia's stillness became absolute. "You imagine Oliver's new humility will shield you from public judgment. I don't want to be shielded from it." "You will when truth begins to cost more than virtue imagined." She gathered her gloves and left without another word. After the door closed, Lady Copley withdrew with Mrs. Bell. Oliver remained near the mantel and did not approach Priscilla. The copied receipts lay between them. "She is right about one thing," Priscilla said. "At sessions, they'll say my name and read the clauses beneath it. I have imagined it every night." Oliver's hands stayed at his sides. "Do you want me to answer that fear or only hear it?" The question undid the reply she had prepared. "Hear it. I'm listening. I'm afraid every explanation will sound like privilege trying to escape consequence. Some people may believe that. I'm afraid Sarah will look at me and remember the signature, not the apology." "She may." Priscilla's breath trembled. "I'm afraid I deserve part of what they think." Oliver did not tell her she deserved nothing. "Then speak the part that is yours," he said, "and don't carry what belongs to Crane or Euphemia." She looked at him across the room. "You would let me stand there and say I failed. I would stand beside the truth that hurts you rather than offer a lie that owns you." No command entered the words, no promise that pain could be avoided. Priscilla crossed the space between them. She did not offer her hand. She stepped into his arms. Oliver waited one breath, giving her time to retreat, then gathered her carefully against him. His embrace was warm and steady, without urgency or claim. Priscilla rested her forehead against his shoulder and allowed herself to be held without being overruled. He did not kiss her. He did not ask when she would return. He remained until her breathing eased and she chose to step back. A knock sounded before either spoke. Mr. Henshaw entered, carrying a sealed request from Mrs. Eliza Beale, Lady Euphemia's former maid. The woman claimed she had delivered the mother's objections to Grenville House and heard Euphemia tell Crane that her grace need only see the lower panel. On Saturday, the 6th of June, Mrs. Eliza Beale gave her statement in Mr. Henshaw's office before Priscilla, Oliver, Mrs. Agnes Bell, Sir Edmund Rook, and 2 clerks who had no connection to House Tallis. She was a widow of 43, who had served Lady Euphemia for 12 years before leaving Grenville House the previous autumn. Her worn gloves remained folded in her lap while the first clerk recorded her answers, and the second checked each name and date. "I carried 3 letters from mothers to Grenville House in April," she said. "They were addressed to the instruction fund, but my lady told me Mr. Crane would collect them there." "Did you open them?" Mr. Henshaw asked. "No, sir." "Did you hear their contents discussed?" "One mother came to the door herself. She said she didn't want her daughter taken out of London. Afterward, Lady Euphemia said poor women became sentimental when opportunity required distance." Priscilla recognized the judgment beneath the polished words. "What happened to the letters?" she asked. "Mr. Crane put them in his inner case. My lady told him not to enter them in the correspondence book until the placements were completed." "Did she explain? Why?" "She said objections encouraged other objections." The scratching of the clerk's pen seemed suddenly loud. Mrs. Beale drew a breath. "There was another occasion, Mr. Crane brought a walnut board with a marbled cover fixed to it. He laid a form under 2 brass clips and folded the upper writing out of sight. Lady Euphemia watched him do it. Oliver's hand tightened once upon the arm of his chair, then stilled. "What words did you hear?" Mr. Henshaw asked. Mrs. Beale looked at Priscilla before answering. "My lady said, Her Grace need only see the lower panel. She signs when duty has already been explained." Mr. Crane laughed. "He said you were more useful than suspicious." The insult did not wound Priscilla as deeply as the accuracy of the method. They had not relied upon stupidity. They had relied upon her discipline, her haste, and her unwillingness to insult people she trusted. "Why didn't you speak sooner?" she asked. "I was afraid no one would believe a maid against a countess." Mrs. Beale's fingers tightened around her gloves, and I told myself the girls were going to honest work. It was easier than admitting I'd carried the letters that might have stopped them. Priscilla heard in the confession a smaller version of her own failure. "Fear explains silence," she said. "It doesn't make your testimony worthless." Mrs. Beale's statement was read back to her, corrected in 2 places, and signed. She claimed only what she had delivered, seen, and heard. No one asked her to interpret accounts or motives beyond her knowledge. When she had gone, Mr. Henshaw opened no sealed packet and repeated no public demonstration. He said only that Molly Toller's employer-side indenture and Sarah Dobson's paper shared the concealment method already established by the board. "Mrs. Beale supplies what the objects could not," he said, a witness to Lady Euphemia's knowledge. The second Northern apprentice reached London the following evening, the 7th of June, after travelling from near Loughborough with a solicitor's married cousin. She chose to give a written statement and did not wish to appear before subscribers or magistrates. Her employer-side indenture was transferred to Mr. Henshaw under receipt and confirmed the same known pattern without another full reconstruction. On the 9th, the third girl arrived with her aunt. She declined a public appearance, but permitted her paper to be examined under witnessed custody. All 3 girls, sent away on the 7th of April, were now safely back in London. None had been promised lodging, money, or future employment in exchange for testimony. On Monday, the 8th of June, the first anniversary of Priscilla's marriage, no flowers arrived at Copley House. Oliver sent no jewels, no dinner invitation, and no appeal to memory. Near noon, Anne Mercer brought Priscilla a single sealed letter addressed in his hand. It contained 4 lines. "I will not ask ceremony to repair what conduct damaged. I will not call 1 year of marriage proof that I have earned the next. I will speak after you at sessions, as I promised. Whatever future remains between us must be one you are free to choose." Priscilla read the letter twice. She placed it in the private compartment of her escritoire, beside the breakfast note. Oliver had returned with the ring. The leather case remained closed inside her reticule. She did not put the ring on. On Wednesday afternoon, the 10th of June, Oliver came to Copley House after Mr. Henshaw confirmed that Bartholomew Crane had surrendered at the magistrate's office. Crane's solicitor had delivered notice that morning. The clean lie bargain had been rejected. Lady Euphemia had refused to guarantee Crane's debts, safety, or future. Faced with the likelihood of being found without her protection, Crane had presented himself and was now held for formal examination on Friday. He had not yet given a complete confession. Lady Copley sat in the adjoining drawing room when Oliver stopped at the morning room threshold. "May I come in?" he asked. "Yes." He entered and remained near the mantel until Priscilla indicated the chair beside the small table. "Crane is in custody," he said, "so Euphemia can no longer say he fled because he alone was guilty. She can still say he surrendered to invent accusations against her. She will." Priscilla studied him. "And when she names House Tallis, when she says your father's debts taught you to value reputation above truth, when the magistrates look to you before I have finished, I will wait, even if silence makes you appear weak, especially then." The answer entered the quiet between them and remained there without ornament. Oliver looked toward her reticule, though he made no reference to the ring inside it. "I meant what I wrote," he said. I want a future with you, but I won't ask you for one before the truth is public, and I won't call your return a duty. What will you call it? A choice I hope to earn. Priscilla felt the old instinct to protect herself rise and then ease. You're learning patience. Poorly. Not as poorly as before. A faint warmth touched his expression. He did not reach for her. May I kiss you? Her breath caught, not from fear, but from the gravity of being asked where once he would have assumed. He remained still while she considered. The room, the marriage, and the distance between them all waited upon her answer. Yes, she said. Priscilla reached first. Her fingers closed around the lapel of his coat, and she drew him toward her. Oliver's mouth met hers gently. The kiss was warm, restrained, and unmistakably chosen. He did not deepen it beyond what she welcomed. Priscilla closed the remaining distance herself, and let the tenderness stay long enough to become real rather than symbolic. When she ended it, she rested her forehead briefly against his. Oliver's hands remained light at her waist until she stepped back, then released her at once. Neither spoke of forgiveness. Neither pretended one kiss had repaired a year of silence. Yet the space between them no longer felt like a wall. On Friday, Oliver said quietly, you speak first, and you speak after me. I promise. Beyond Copley House, Bartholomew Crane waited in custody for the magistrates, and Lady Euphemia did not yet know whether the man she had abandoned would remain loyal when her name was spoken. On Friday, the 12th of June, the hearing room at the Middlesex Sessions House in Clerkenwell Green was full when Priscilla entered. 2 magistrates sat above the long table. Parish officers occupied one side. Solicitors, trustees, mothers and subscribers crowded the benches. Sarah Dobson sat beside Mrs. Toller, pale but steady. The other 2 girls returned from Leicestershire had chosen not to appear. Their witnessed statements and documents remained with Mr. Henshaw. Lady Euphemia Grenville sat in black silk near her solicitor, composed. Bartholomew Crane stood under lawful custody beside an officer, carefully dressed, though no authority remained in his hands. Oliver took the chair beside Priscilla, not before her. When the senior magistrate asked who wished to begin, Oliver turned toward Priscilla and remained silent. She rose. The girls and their families should be heard first. Sarah came forward. Her voice trembled on the first sentence and strengthened on the second. No one read the full indenture to me in London. At the workshop, they showed me only the Duchess's signature when I asked to leave. They said her name proved that my mother had agreed. Mrs. Toller followed with the copy of her written withdrawal. She had delivered it before Molly's planned departure. No acknowledgement had come. I stood at Paddington with my refusal in my hand, she said, and they still meant to take my daughter. Priscilla then gave her account without asking the room to spare her. She confirmed that the signatures upon the 3 produced employer-side instruments were genuine. She explained the marbled covers, the exposed lower panels, and her failure to unfold the papers before signing. I was deceived, she said. I was also careless. My carelessness does not excuse the fraud, and the fraud does not erase my responsibility for placing my name where I had not read. A murmur passed through the benches. The senior magistrate raised one hand, and the room quieted. Mr. Henshaw presented the first group of documents. Molly Toller's employer-side indenture, Sarah Dobson's employer-side indenture, and the copy surrendered by the second returned apprentice were placed under witnessed custody. Each bore Priscilla's genuine signature. Each contained clauses allowing removal from London, lengthy service, and transfer. Mr. Pike and 2 other parish officers then produced the official counterparts carrying the same reference numbers. Those papers contained different terms. They limited training to London or required fresh guardian approval for travel. None bore Priscilla's signature. Mr. Henshaw brought the cut edges close enough for the magistrates to see the mismatch without allowing any paper to leave its custodian. The counterparts were not cut from the same instruments, he said. The walnut board was unwrapped from its sealed cloth. Mr. Henshaw demonstrated it once with a blank form. The brass clips held the paper. The 3 grooves allowed the upper clauses and heading to disappear beneath the stiff marbled cover, while the lower signature panel remained exposed. The marks made by the clips corresponded with those on the 3 employer-side documents. No one needed the trick repeated. The device explained how a genuine signature could be obtained beneath hidden terms. The next evidence concerned knowledge and money. Certified extracts from Mr. Caleb Morris's wharf ledger showed that Crane had personally booked all 7 passages, 3 for the 7th of April and 4 for the 4th of May. He had paid in cash and ordered the travelling papers kept folded until the girls were beyond London. The mother's objections, found unopened in Crane's locked drawer, were dated before the April departures. The premium schedule listed inflated sums beside the same names. Certified receipts showed that part of those sums had been applied to Grenville creditors and to the lease of Grenville House. 2 receipts carried Euphemia's endorsement. Mrs. Eliza Beale's signed statement was read aloud. She had delivered maternal objections to Grenville House. She had seen Crane demonstrate the walnut board. She had heard Euphemia say, "Her Grace need only see the lower panel." Euphemia's solicitor rose. "My client denies instructing any fraud. A servant's memory and a dishonest clerk's records cannot transform clerical misconduct into conspiracy." Euphemia stood before he could ask her to remain seated. Mr. Crane was hired to manage details. If he misunderstood my concern for respectable employment, then he acted beyond authority. I endorsed payments presented as lawful expenses. I did not design these instruments. Crane turned toward her. "Beyond authority," he repeated. Euphemia did not look at him. "You were a paid servant, entrusted with accounts." The distance in her voice destroyed whatever loyalty fear had preserved. Crane's face lost its practiced calm. "I was told the mothers would ruin the placements if their objections were entered." Euphemia's solicitor objected, but Crane continued. Lady Euphemia approved the board. She approved the false upper clauses. She said, "The Duchess's hand would quiet parish questions." I suppressed the letters. I booked the passages. I took commissions. She directed that the excess premiums be sent against Grenville obligations. "You lie to save yourself," Euphemia said. "No," Crane replied. "I lie when I am paid to do it." The room erupted. The magistrates called for order. Under questioning, Crane admitted that the parish counterparts had been prepared with acceptable local terms, while the employer-side instruments carried harsher clauses. He admitted using the board to expose only Priscilla's signature panel, collecting objections and withholding them. He did not deny the commissions. When asked whether Euphemia had known that consent had been withdrawn, he said she had read 2 objections herself and ordered the departures to proceed. The magistrates withdrew briefly, then returned before noon. Their ruling did not pretend to settle every consequence in one day. The 3 produced employer-side instruments were found to have been fraudulently procured and therefore unenforceable. Existing restraints upon the other 4 disputed instruments would continue. The parish overseers were directed to begin separate discharge proceedings for each apprentice. Crane was committed for further proceedings, and all physical evidence was to remain preserved under documented custody. Mrs. Bell and Sir Edmund Rook then rose in their separate authority as independent trustees. They announced that Euphemia had been removed from every office connected with the instruction fund. Civil recovery of diverted premiums would begin at once. Grenville duels and lease interests would be examined, but no innocent servant would lose wages or lodging because of the inquiry. Euphemia remained standing as if posture might preserve what office had not. It did not. Oliver rose only after Priscilla had answered every question. House Tallis lent this scheme a title where scrutiny should have stood, he said. I treated my wife's come as consent. At the public examination, I declared her blameless and claimed sole control because I feared disorder more than I respected her voice. That was not protection. It was another use of rank to decide what others were permitted to say. He looked towards the mothers rather than the subscribers. I will not ask this room to praise me for admitting what should never have required correction. The senior magistrate addressed Priscilla. Your signature was genuine. The terms above it were concealed by design. The law distinguishes fraudulently procured instruments from the moral failure of signing unread papers. You have not hidden that failure. Neither should anyone use it to excuse those who engineered the concealment. Mrs. Toller came forward afterward. I'm not thanking you for being perfect, she said. You weren't. No, I'm thanking you for coming back after you knew. Sarah stood beside her. That matters to me too. Public approval did not break into applause. It came as something quieter and more difficult. Mothers approached Priscilla without bowing. Parish officers asked for her help drafting the discharge protections. Subscribers who had once moved their chairs away now waited to speak. But Priscilla turned first toward the girls. Only when Sarah and Mrs. Toller had left with Mr. Henshaw did she enter the small anteroom behind the chamber. Oliver remained outside until she opened the door herself. You may come in. He closed the door and stopped several feet away. The noise of the sessions house softened behind the paneling. I meant what I said in the hearing, he told her. And I owe you more than a public correction. Priscilla held his gaze. Then say what is true. Oliver drew one careful breath. I love you. I love you because you would not let your failure become another person's prison. I love you because you chose truth when I offered control, and because you kept choosing it when truth wounded you too. His voice roughened. I do not ask you to return to the marriage we had. Priscilla crossed the room. Good, I will not. She took his hand. I will return only to a marriage where nothing is folded for the sake of peace. Hope entered his face without becoming possession. Then that is the marriage I will spend my life learning to make. I love you too, Oliver. The words were not gratitude, relief, or duty. They were choice. She lifted her free hand to his cheek and kissed him. Oliver answered gently, one hand closing around hers while the other remained light at her waist. The kiss carried no promise that the work was finished. It promised that neither of them would hide the work again. When Priscilla stepped back, the leather ring case remained closed inside her reticule. She had spoken love. She had not yet restored the gold. On Friday, the 24th of July, Priscilla entered the breakfast room at Kellington House with her reticule looped over one wrist and the leather ring case resting against her palm through the fabric. The mantel clock showed 9:42. Sunlight crossed the same polished table where she had left the ring 11 weeks earlier, though the room no longer held Lady Euphemia's perfume, Crane's papers, or the tense obedience of servants waiting for rank to decide what truth might be spoken. Oliver stood when she entered. His gaze touched the reticule, then returned to her face. He asked nothing about it. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning." Her place had not been laid at the far end, where a duchess might be displayed opposite her husband. Two settings waited beside each other near the open window, with enough space between them for comfort. Upon the table lay 2 sheets of paper, both fully unfolded. No cover rested over them. No weight concealed a line. Priscilla removed her gloves and sat. Oliver remained standing until she was settled, then took the chair beside her. "You came by choice," he said. "I did, and you may leave by choice." I know that answer mattered because he had spent 6 weeks proving it. Priscilla had remained at Copley House, while parish proceedings separated each girl from the fraudulent instruments. The 4 whose departure had been halted stayed with their families. Molly Toller had chosen to continue lessons in accounting and correspondence under Mrs. Bell's supervision. Sarah Dobson had elected to live with an aunt while studying dressmaking on terms read aloud in her presence. The 2nd returned apprentice had chosen education for another year. The 3rd had accepted paid work near her family after receiving a true copy of every condition. No decision had been made for any of them in exchange for testimony. Bartholomew Crane remained in custody, awaiting further proceedings. Lady Euphemia had been removed from all charitable offices and had gone to Bath after surrendering the lease of Grenville House. Over 6 weeks, selected jewels and her lease interest had been placed into a civil settlement for restitution. Innocent servants had received their wages and assistance in finding new positions. Nothing had been repaired in a single triumphant afternoon. It had been repaired through entries, receipts, hearings, questions, and choices repeated until they became practice. At Copley House, a ground-floor room had been opened 3 mornings each week for girls and guardians. Every indenture was read aloud before signing. Every person received a true copy. No folded paper was accepted. Priscilla intended to continue that work whether she slept in Bedford Square or Grosvenor Square. Oliver had visited by arrangement. He had written letters without demanding replies, walked with her in public gardens without guiding her path, and learned that ordinary disagreement could reveal more change than any public confession. 3 days earlier, they had disputed reimbursements for uniforms. Oliver had proposed 1 fixed allowance for every apprentice. Priscilla had told him the rule would punish larger girls, girls needing winter wool, and families already supplying shoes. Once, he would have called the uniformity fair and ended discussion. Instead, he had asked for examples. By evening, the rule had been revised to cover actual necessary expense within a stated range, with exceptions countersigned by Mrs. Bell and Sir Edmund Rook. "I still think the first schedule was easier to administer," he said now as a footman poured coffee. "It was easier for the administrator. A distinction I am learning to distrust. Not distrust. Examine. You see? You have returned less than 5 minutes, and already the Duke is being corrected at breakfast. The Duke appears to be surviving. His smile arrived slowly. Better than surviving." The footman withdrew. Oliver touched neither of the unfolded sheets. "Mrs. Bell sent the wording yesterday," he said. "I haven't signed." Priscilla read the first rule aloud. No signature, shall be accepted upon any instrument while a portion of its text remains folded, covered, obscured, or withheld from the person signing. The second required every apprentice and guardian to hear the complete terms, ask questions without penalty, and receive an accurate copy before consent became binding. Beneath the rules waited lines for the trustees, parish officers, Priscilla and Oliver. "Do you wish to alter anything?" he asked. "The word accurate should be true." "Why?" "Because a clerk may call an incomplete summary accurate. A true copy must contain the instrument." Oliver considered the sentence rather than the challenge. Agreed. He drew the page toward himself, crossed out accurate, wrote true above it, and returned the sheet to her for inspection. Only when Priscilla nodded did he reach for the pen again. "Breakfast first," she said. He glanced at the clock. "There are dispatches from Walcott Park waiting. They waited while I was silent. They can wait while we eat." Oliver set down the pen. A formidable principle. "You may have another cup of coffee while considering it." They ate without committee papers passing between plates. Oliver told her the Walcott steward had objected to a tenant's requested drainage repair, then stopped himself before giving only the steward's judgment. "The tenant says the lower field floods after 2 days of rain," he added. "I have asked for both men to meet at the field. Not in your study? No. I thought the water might contribute useful evidence." Priscilla laughed. The sound no longer startled them. It belonged in the room now. When the plates had been removed, she opened her reticule. Oliver became still, but he did not lean closer. Priscilla brought out the leather case and placed it between the two unfolded rules. She opened it herself. The gold band lay against dark velvet. Time had not erased the inner scratch from the chapel step. She lifted the ring and held it where the morning light reached the mark. "I once believed this meant I had entered a finished marriage," she said. "So did I." It did not. No, Oliver's voice was quiet. "We inherited a ceremony. We are making the marriage now." Priscilla looked at him. "I am not putting it on because the scandal is over, I know, or because I owe the House of Tallis a return. You owe this house nothing that you do not freely give. I am putting it on because I choose the marriage we are making, the one in which love does not require hidden peace." Hope moved across his face, tender enough to make him look younger than 41. "Still," he asked, "are you certain?" "Yes." Priscilla slid the ring onto her own finger. It passed the knuckle and settled into its familiar place. The gold did not restore the woman who had removed it. It honored the woman who had learned she could leave, speak, refuse, return, and still love without surrendering judgment. Oliver waited. He did not take her hand until she turned her palm upward. Then he lifted it with care and pressed a kiss to the inside of her wrist below the ring. The touch was gentle and brief. "I love you," he said, "not for returning, for choosing truth, including when it leads away from me." Priscilla touched his cheek. "I love you, not because you protected me, but because you learned to stand beside me without standing over me." She leaned forward and kissed him. Oliver answered with quiet warmth, one hand resting near her waist and the other still supporting her open palm. The kiss carried affection rather than apology now. When it ended, Priscilla remained close enough for their foreheads to touch. "We should read the rules once more," she murmured. "Every word, every word." Together they read both sheets aloud. They corrected a misplaced comma, finished their coffee, and signed only after every line remained visible. The dispatches from Walcott Park waited at the edge of the table. Between Priscilla and Oliver, lay 2 uncreased pages, her restored ring, and his hand resting near hers without covering it. Nothing remained hidden beneath the gold.